In today's episode, we dive into the horrifying final moments of police officer Sarah Mitchell, along with other officer stories. From an officer chasing a criminal on the Everglades, not knowing what's lurking beneath the waters, to a raid turning fatal after facing 2 wild chimpanzees. But let's start with the first story. March 22nd, 2015 dawned crisp and clear in Glacier National Park, Montana. The early spring air carried the scent of melting snow as temperatures hovered at 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Officer Sarah Mitchell, 29, adjusted her radio one final time as she prepared for another patrol through the remote backcountry. A dedicated wildlife conservation officer with 4 years of experience protecting Montana's wilderness, Sarah embodied the careful professionalism that made her respected among colleagues and the local community. That morning began routinely enough, with Sarah checking in with dispatch at 6:45 a.m. However, at 7:15 a.m., she received an urgent radio call about suspected poachers near a known grizzly den site in the remote Ptarmigan Creek area. The report came from a concerned hiker who had observed 2 men with rifles in an area clearly marked as off-limits during bear denning season. With her partner called away on a medical emergency and poachers potentially disturbing hibernating bears during the critical emergence period, Sarah faced a decision that would prove fatal. Following established protocol, she contacted her supervisor to request permission to investigate alone. Captain Torres authorized the solo patrol with specific instructions to maintain radio contact every 15 minutes. At 7:20 a.m., Sarah began the 3-mile hike to the reported location. As she approached the area, she began experiencing intermittent radio interference due to the mountainous terrain. She attempted to call in her position at 7:45 a.m. but received only static in response. Unknown to Sarah, a 400-pound female grizzly with 2 cubs had recently emerged from hibernation in a den located just 200 yards from her position. The mother bear was already under significant stress from protecting her 3-month-old cubs during their first weeks outside the den. Spring emergence is one of the most dangerous times to encounter bears, as mothers are extremely protective and have not yet established regular feeding patterns after months of hibernation. At 7:50 a.m., Sarah spotted the bear family from approximately 150 yards. Following her training, she immediately began to retreat slowly and quietly, avoiding direct eye contact and making no sudden movements. She reached for her bear spray but discovered that the canister had been damaged during her hike over rocky terrain. The bear spray canister showed clear signs of impact damage, with a dented housing and a jammed safety mechanism that prevented deployment. As she attempted to back away slowly, she stepped on a fallen branch hidden beneath a patch of snow. The branch snapped with a sharp crack that echoed through the quiet forest. The sound triggered an immediate defensive response from the mother grizzly. The grizzly charged immediately, covering the 150-yard distance in less than 10 seconds. Sarah desperately attempted to deploy her damaged bear spray, but the jammed mechanism refused to function despite her frantic efforts. The massive predator struck her with the force of a small vehicle, knocking her to the ground with devastating impact. The bear's initial attack focused on neutralizing what she perceived as a threat to her cubs, using her powerful claws and crushing bite force. Sarah managed to activate her emergency beacon with her final conscious action, but the device's signal was weakened by the mountainous terrain. The attack was swift and brutal, lasting less than 2 minutes but causing injuries that would prove immediately fatal. Despite her training and experience, there was no defense against the overwhelming strength and fury of a protective mother bear. Sarah's emergency beacon continued transmitting for 6 hours before search and rescue teams could locate the signal and reach her position. The search was complicated by the same terrain and atmospheric conditions that had interfered with her radio communications. When rescuers finally reached the scene, they found evidence of the tragic encounter and Sarah's body, which had been partially moved by the bear in behavior consistent with a protective mother removing perceived threats from the vicinity of her cubs. This tragic incident led to immediate changes in park service protocols, including mandatory equipment inspections before solo patrols, improved radio systems with satellite backup capabilities, and enhanced emergency beacon technology. The 2-officer rule for bear country patrols was strengthened, with exceptions only allowed in extreme emergencies. But while the mountains of Montana claimed 1 dedicated officer due to equipment failure, the hill country of Texas would soon witness an equally tragic encounter where standard protocols would prove insufficient against nature's most elusive predator. August 7th, 2016 brought sweltering heat to the hill country outside Austin, Texas. The temperature had reached 98 degrees Fahrenheit by late afternoon, with humidity levels making the heat index feel like 110 degrees. Officer Marcus Rodriguez, 34, methodically checked his equipment as he prepared to respond to multiple 911 calls about livestock attacks. A veteran K-9 officer with 8 years on the Travis County Sheriff's Department, Marcus embodied the calm professionalism that had made him one of the department's most trusted handlers. His partner for the past 3 years had been Rex, a 4-year-old German Shepherd whose intelligence and loyalty had made him legendary within the department. Rex weighed 85 pounds and had been trained at the prestigious K-9 Academy in San Antonio. That evening, Marcus received the first call at 6:30 p.m. about livestock attacks in the Bee Cave area. The initial report described a large cat that had killed 2 goats, leaving behind distinctive claw marks and partially consumed carcasses. Within the next hour, 3 additional calls came in from neighboring properties, all describing similar attacks with evidence pointing to a large mountain lion. The drought conditions that had persisted throughout the summer had created a perfect storm for human-wildlife conflicts. Natural prey animals like deer had moved closer to residential areas seeking water sources, and predators had followed them. At 7:45 p.m., Marcus and Rex arrived at the location of the most recent attack. Marcus immediately established a perimeter and called for wildlife officials, but was informed that the nearest Texas Parks and Wildlife team was responding to another mountain lion incident over 100 miles away. With darkness approaching rapidly and the predator potentially threatening residential areas where children and pets could become victims, Marcus contacted his supervisor and requested permission to track and locate the animal while maintaining a safe distance. Sergeant Chen authorized the operation with specific instructions to maintain radio contact every 10 minutes. The tracking operation began at 8:15 p.m. with Marcus and Rex following a clear trail of paw prints and scent markers left by the mountain lion. The 140-pound male mountain lion they were tracking had been pushed into the area by drought conditions and was already under significant stress. As Marcus and Rex followed the trail deeper into dense cedar breaks, Rex began showing signs of extreme agitation that Marcus had never seen before. The German Shepherd's hackles were raised, his body was tense, and he was emitting low growls that indicated he sensed immediate danger. Marcus, recognizing these warning signs, immediately called for backup and began to retreat from the area. However, the mountain lion had already detected their presence and was monitoring their movements from a concealed position. The animal felt trapped between the approaching K-9 team and the open area behind it, where ranchers had been conducting their search earlier. With no clear escape route and feeling cornered by the persistent pursuit, the stressed predator made the decision to attack. Out of nowhere, the mountain lion struck with explosive violence. The attack came from above, with the cat leaping from a limestone outcropping directly onto Rex. The German Shepherd, despite his size, training, and protective instincts, was no match for the mountain lion's overwhelming power. The cat's initial strike was perfectly executed, targeting Rex's neck with crushing bite force while its powerful claws raked across the dog's body. Marcus immediately drew his service weapon and fired 3 shots in rapid succession, but the thick vegetation, fading light, and the mountain lion's rapid movement made accurate shooting nearly impossible. The sound of gunfire only served to further agitate the already stressed predator, escalating the violence of its attack on Rex. The mountain lion's assault on Rex lasted less than 30 seconds, but the damage was catastrophic. With Rex mortally wounded, the mountain lion turned its attention to Marcus, who was desperately trying to get a clear shot while calling for immediate backup on his radio. The big cat approached with fluid, silent grace, its yellow eyes fixed on Marcus with predatory intensity. Marcus managed to fire 2 more shots, one of which grazed the mountain lion's shoulder, but the wound only served to enrage the animal further. The cat leaped onto Marcus with explosive force, knocking him to the ground and causing him to lose his grip on his weapon. The mountain lion's attack on Marcus was swift and precise, targeting vital areas with instinctive efficiency. His final transmission, received by dispatch at 8:42 p.m., consisted of broken words and sounds of struggle before the radio went silent. Both Marcus and Rex had succumbed to their injuries before help could reach them. The mountain lion was later tracked and killed by wildlife officials, But the investigation revealed that Marcus had followed all established protocols and made reasonable decisions based on the information available. This tragedy led to mandatory wildlife official coordination for all large predator calls and enhanced protocols requiring immediate backup for confirmed mountain lion sightings. Yet, as terrifying as encounters with mountain lions might be, the swamps of Florida held an even more ancient and patient predator, one that would claim an officer's life during what should have been a routine pursuit with adequate backup. June 14, 2017 brought oppressive humidity to the Florida Everglades. The temperature had reached 89 degrees Fahrenheit by evening, but the humidity made it feel like a sauna. Officer James Thompson, 31, carefully adjusted his waterproof flashlight and checked his radio equipment as he coordinated with backup units in pursuit of an armed robbery suspect who had fled into the treacherous swampland. A patrol officer with 5 years of experience in rural Florida, James embodied the careful, methodical approach that had made him one of the department's most trusted officers for high-risk operations in challenging environments. He was intimately familiar with alligator encounters, having received specialized training for swamp operations through the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. The evening's events began at 9:15 p.m. when James and 2 backup officers responded to a 911 call about an armed robbery at a convenience store on the edge of the Everglades. The suspect, 28-year-old Michael Crawford, had robbed the store at gunpoint and fled in a stolen vehicle when police arrived. Crawford had an extensive criminal history including multiple violent felonies and a pattern of fleeing into wilderness areas to evade capture. The pursuit began on State Road 29 and continued for approximately 15 miles before Crawford's vehicle left the roadway and crashed into a drainage canal. At 9:45 p.m., Crawford abandoned his crashed vehicle and fled on foot into the Everglades, plunging into waist-deep swamp water. Despite warnings shouted by the pursuing officers, James immediately established a perimeter with his backup units, following department protocol for water-based pursuits in alligator habitat. However, approximately 10 minutes after entering the water, Crawford began calling out in apparent distress, claiming that he was drowning and couldn't swim. His cries for help became increasingly desperate, and he appeared to be struggling to stay afloat in the deeper water approximately 50 yards from shore. Department policy required officers to preserve life whenever possible, even during arrest situations involving dangerous suspects. James was faced with the choice of allowing a suspect to potentially drown or entering dangerous waters to attempt a rescue. James made the split-second decision that would cost him his life, believing that he could conduct a quick rescue with proper safety equipment and backup support. Deputy Santos immediately called for specialized swamp rescue teams and established overwatch with high-powered spotlights, while Deputy Kim maintained radio contact with dispatch. What James didn't know was that the area contained several large American alligators, including a massive 12-foot male that weighed over 600 pounds and was highly territorial during the current breeding season. This particular alligator had been monitoring the area since the vehicle crash, attracted by the unusual activity and vibrations in the water. As James waded through the dark water toward Crawford, his waterproof flashlight illuminated the path ahead, but could not penetrate the murky water to reveal what lurked beneath the surface. The attack came without warning as James reached the halfway point to Crawford's position. The massive alligator erupted from the water with explosive force, grabbing James's left leg in its powerful jaws and immediately beginning the death roll that would prove fatal. The attack was so sudden and violent that James had no opportunity to deploy any of his safety equipment or call for help. James's radio calls for assistance became garbled and desperate as the alligator's death roll made communication impossible and water began damaging his equipment. Deputies Santos and Kim immediately recognized the nature of the attack and called for emergency medical assistance while attempting to reach James's position. However, the alligator had dragged James into deeper water where the death roll continued with devastating effect. The alligator's grip was unbreakable, its serrated teeth designed specifically for holding struggling prey, while the death roll caused massive trauma to vital organs and blood vessels. The attack continued for several minutes, with the alligator's incredible strength making any rescue attempt impossible. Crawford, witnessing the horrific attack from his position in the water, managed to grab onto a fallen cypress log and was later rescued by the arriving backup unit. Specialized swamp rescue teams arrived within 15 minutes of the attack. but James had already disappeared beneath the dark water. The rescue teams used sonar equipment, underwater cameras, and trained divers to search for James's body, but the alligator had dragged him to a location where recovery was extremely dangerous. James's body was finally recovered the following morning by specialized dive teams using advanced sonar equipment and underwater robotics. The recovery operation required the temporary removal of several large alligators from the area, a dangerous and complex process that highlighted the extreme hazards faced by anyone entering these waters. Crawford, traumatized by witnessing the attack that had occurred during an attempt to save his life, provided detailed accounts to investigators that helped them understand the exact sequence of events. He was subsequently convicted of armed robbery and sentenced to 15 years in prison, but he expressed genuine remorse for the role his actions had played in James's death. This incident led to enhanced swamp rescue protocols and specialized equipment for water-based pursuits in alligator habitats, emphasizing the use of specialized teams rather than individual officers for water emergencies in dangerous wildlife areas. The protocols established following James's death have successfully prevented similar tragedies while maintaining law enforcement's commitment to preserving life. But while the swamps of Florida claimed one officer during a rescue attempt, the remote deserts of Texas would soon witness an encounter where proper protocols would be abandoned due to urgent, time-sensitive circumstances. October 3, 2014 brought clear skies and moderate temperatures to Big Bend National Park, Texas. The desert air was crisp at 72 degrees Fahrenheit, with low humidity and a gentle breeze. Detective Lisa Park, 37, methodically reviewed her case notes as she prepared to investigate a time-sensitive cartel execution site near the Mexican border. An experienced homicide detective with 12 years of law enforcement experience, Lisa embodied the thorough professionalism that had made her one of the El Paso Police Department's most successful investigators in cases involving organized crime and cross-border criminal activity. Her expertise in homicide investigation had made her the lead detective on a multi-agency task force investigating drug cartel activities along the Texas-Mexico border. The urgent situation that would prove fatal began at 2:30 p.m. when Lisa received a call from DEA agent Carlos Martinez. An informant had provided GPS coordinates for a cartel execution site that intelligence indicated would be cleaned or destroyed by the end of the day. The site potentially contained evidence linking a major drug trafficking organization to a series of murders. The informant warned that the site would be sanitized by cartel cleanup crews before nightfall, creating an extremely narrow window of opportunity to collect crucial evidence. Lisa immediately requested backup support, but her regular partner was testifying in federal court and wouldn't be available for at least 8 hours. The nearest backup detective was over 4 hours away. After consulting with her supervisor, Lisa received authorization to conduct initial documentation of the scene alone, with specific instructions to photograph evidence only and retreat immediately if any dangers were encountered. She was required to maintain satellite communication contact every 30 minutes. At 3:15 p.m., Lisa arrived at the suspected cartel execution site in remote desert terrain approximately 40 miles from the nearest paved road. The crime scene showed clear evidence of recent violent activity, with disturbed earth, bloodstains, and personal effects scattered across the area. Lisa began her documentation process, photographing evidence and collecting samples while maintaining constant awareness of her surroundings. What Lisa didn't know was that a 250-pound male black bear had been frequenting the area for several weeks, attracted by food waste and garbage left behind by various cartel camps in the region. This particular bear had been conditioned to associate human activity with food sources, making it far more likely to approach humans rather than flee when encountered. At 3:45 p.m., while photographing evidence near the center of the crime scene, Lisa heard movement in the rocks approximately 50 yards away. The black bear emerged from its resting place among the rocks, initially showing typical defensive behavior by standing on its hind legs to assess the situation. Lisa followed her wildlife training perfectly, making herself appear large by raising her arms above her head, speaking in calm, firm tones, and slowly backing toward her vehicle while avoiding direct eye contact with the bear. She successfully deployed her bear spray when the animal approached within 30 feet, creating a cloud of deterrent that should have been effective. However, the desert wind conditions worked against Lisa. carrying most of the spray away from the bear and reducing its effectiveness significantly. The partially effective deterrent only served to agitate the animal further, as it had been expecting to find food in an area it had claimed as its territory. When Lisa continued her retreat toward her vehicle, she encountered the rocky, uneven terrain that characterizes much of the Big Bend region. While backing away from the bear, she stepped into a hidden depression and fell backward, landing hard on the rocky ground and temporarily stunning herself. The fall triggered the bear's predatory response, as sudden movement and the appearance of vulnerability often stimulate attack behavior in stressed or food-conditioned bears. The bear's attack was swift and determined, focusing on what it perceived as a threat to its territory and food sources. Lisa managed to draw her service weapon and fire 3 shots, but the bear's thick hide, dense muscle mass, and determination made the wounds non-fatal. Lisa's final action was to activate her GPS emergency beacon, which immediately transmitted her location and distress signal to search and rescue teams. However, the remote location meant that help was over 90 minutes away, and her injuries from the bear attack prevented her from reaching adequate shelter. Search and rescue teams reached her location within 95 minutes of the distress signal. However, despite immediate medical attention and rapid transport to a trauma center, Lisa's injuries proved fatal. The evidence Lisa had managed to collect before the attack proved crucial in the prosecution of the Cartel case, leading to multiple convictions and the disruption of a major drug trafficking organization. Yet, as shocking as these wilderness encounters were, perhaps the most disturbing case would unfold in an urban setting during what should have been a routine warrant execution, where intelligence failures would place officers in contact with predators that no tactical training could have prepared them for. January 28, 2013 brought cold, overcast skies to Riverside, California. The temperature hovered at 45 degrees Fahrenheit in the pre-dawn hours as the SWAT team prepared for what intelligence reports suggested would be a routine raid on a suspected money laundering operation. Officer David Chen, 28, methodically checked his tactical gear as his SWAT team prepared to execute a warrant on what they believed was a standard financial crimes operation involving money laundering through a legitimate animal import business. A SWAT officer with 3 years of tactical experience, David embodied the precision and discipline that had made him a valued member of the Riverside Police Department's elite tactical unit. The warrant they were executing was based on a 6-month financial investigation that had identified suspicious money transfers, suggesting a sophisticated money laundering operation. The target facility, Exotic Imports International, appeared to be a legitimate business that imported small animals for pet stores and research facilities, but financial analysis had revealed patterns consistent with money laundering activities. The business owner, 45-year-old Robert Martinez, had no history of violence and was expected to surrender peacefully when confronted with the warrant. At 5:15 a.m., David's 8-member SWAT team executed the warrant following standard tactical procedures for commercial building clearing. Martinez was located in a small apartment within the facility and surrendered without resistance when confronted by the tactical team. The facility's layout was more complex than the intelligence had indicated, with multiple levels, hidden rooms, and a sophisticated ventilation system that suggested activities beyond simple animal importation. As the team progressed through the building, they discovered evidence of illegal breeding operations, including specialized enclosures, veterinary equipment, and documentation indicating the presence of prohibited species. Martinez, realizing that his illegal animal operations had been discovered, panicked and believed that creating chaos would provide an opportunity to destroy evidence or escape. He activated emergency releases on several animal enclosures before being fully secured by the arrest team. The system simultaneously opened 3 large enclosures that housed adult chimpanzees, animals that Martinez had been illegally breeding for sale to private collectors and research facilities. Adult chimpanzees represent one of the most dangerous animals that law enforcement officers might encounter in an urban setting. These primates possess strength 5 times greater than humans, with powerful arms capable of literally tearing limbs from joints and crushing bones with ease. Their intelligence makes them unpredictable, and their social nature means that multiple animals will often act together when threatened or confused. The 3 chimpanzees that were released had been living in captivity for over 2 years, but they had not been properly socialized and were already under significant stress from the noise and commotion of the raid. When released into an unfamiliar environment filled with armed strangers wearing tactical gear, their stress levels reached critical points that triggered aggressive defensive behavior. David was clearing the main animal housing area when he encountered the first released chimpanzee, a 140-pound male that had been hiding behind overturned equipment in a state of extreme agitation. The animal, terrified and disoriented by the tactical lights, shouting, and unfamiliar surroundings, perceived the armed officers as immediate threats and attacked with explosive violence. The chimp's initial assault was devastating and immediate. The impact knocked David to the ground and caused him to lose his grip on his primary weapon, leaving him vulnerable to the continued attack. David's tactical training had prepared him for armed suspects, barricaded subjects, and hostage situations, but nothing in his experience had equipped him to fight an enraged primate whose strength and agility far exceeded human capabilities. The chimpanzee's attack was relentless and savage, using its powerful hands to grab and tear at David's tactical gear, while its sharp teeth sought vulnerable areas not protected by body armor. Sergeant Mike Torres, the team leader, immediately called for animal control and veterinary assistance while attempting to coordinate a rescue effort. However, the presence of 2 additional agitated chimpanzees in the area made any approach extremely dangerous. David managed to draw his sidearm and fire 2 shots, but the close quarters and the chimpanzee's grip on his arm made accurate shooting impossible. The gunshots only served to further agitate all 3 animals, escalating the violence of the attack and causing the other 2 chimps to move closer to the conflict. The chimpanzee's assault on David continued for nearly 4 minutes. Its powerful hands, with opposable thumbs and grip strength far exceeding human capability, made it impossible for David to break free or defend himself effectively. Animal control officers arrived at the scene within 12 minutes of Sergeant Torres's call, but they were initially unprepared for the situation they encountered. Dr. Jennifer Martinez, a veterinarian specializing in primate behavior, arrived with tranquilizer equipment approximately 18 minutes after the initial attack began. Dr. Martinez was able to successfully tranquilize the attacking chimpanzee after 22 minutes, but David had already succumbed to his injuries. The 2 remaining chimpanzees were tranquilized without further incident, but the damage was done. David's teammates immediately began emergency medical treatment, but the massive trauma inflicted by the chimpanzee's prolonged attack had caused injuries that were incompatible with life. Despite the immediate response of paramedics and rapid transport to a trauma center, David was pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital. Martinez was charged with multiple federal crimes, including money laundering, illegal importation of endangered species, maintaining dangerous animals without proper permits, and criminally negligent homicide in David's death. This incident led to comprehensive changes in SWAT protocols and intelligence gathering procedures. New equipment was procured, including specialized protective gear designed to resist animal attacks and improved communication systems for coordinating with animal control personnel. Thanks for watching. Want to watch more? Click on your screen now.